All right, so we are now up to lesson 15. It's going to be a short one in terms of slideshow work because we're also going to work on the pre-test later in the lesson and give you an opportunity to ask me questions. So, what are we wanting to do here today for lesson 15? Well, first I want to review a couple more missed questions from test one. And I say commonly. Commonly is not an accurate term here. Still, like 3/4 or more of the kids pretty much got these right. But these were, of the questions missed, the ones missed more. So we should review them. We're going to review distributing and factoring. And then we're going to work on our pretest. So for this first video, we're going to do reviewing the missed questions and also talking about factoring with the greatest common factor. And then for the second video, we will talk about the factoring of trinomials. And then I will later on another day add a video of how to do all the questions on the pretest. So here we go. Oh, and don't forget, performance is a function of preparation. One of my favorite sayings. Okay, so this was a kind of question that students got wrong on the test the other day, a little more frequently than most. And I made sure that on test number 2, there was one like this. So, where do we go wrong? I'm not sure exactly. Maybe the going wrong step here, I think you knew what order of steps to do. I'm thinking maybe when you did -1 and -4, you somehow got a 3 out of it. It's not correct if you did that, but that's the only thing I can think of. So let's work on what follows here. There's the question, and the first step obviously is going to be to either add -4 or subtract 4 from both sides. So the question is, what's -1 minus 4? Be very careful when you put this into your calculator, if you use a calculator, that you don't write -1 minus -4. That's wrong. It's only one negative sign in each position. There's a -4 here under the 4, and there's a -4 here under the 1. So what you should just type is -1 and then the subtraction symbol 4. Okay? You could also, I don't advise this, but you could type in -1 plus -4. But you can't do -1 minus -4. Since I'm only putting one minus sign on the left when I write -4, I only put one on the right. And when I enter that in the calculator, it's -1 minus 4. Or -1 minus 4, I should say. And then that will tell you -5. I suspect that that's where the bulk of any mistakes were made. And now you need to multiply both sides by -5. And when I do that, I get n is equal to 25. Okay? So that's what I think is the most likely place that the students who got it wrong with. So let's have you try this one right here. Go ahead. A little stop and start moment. Okay. So first step up is to subtract 7 from both sides. 10 minus 7 is 3. And then I multiply both sides by -3. On the left, they go die, and I'm left with n equals -9. Okay? So there were 5 questions overall that students struggled isn't the right word, because well more than half of the students got them right. In fact, in many cases, more than 3/4 of the students got them right. But there were ones that students got wrong. So we did 3 last time, we've done 1 this time, and here is the last one we're about to cover. I couldn't figure out what students did wrong on this one, except if it was possibly the same mistake that we just talked about with the negative. So let's go through this step by step and show you how to do it, and then give you one to practice. So the first thing I have to do is distribute the 4. 4 times h is 4h, 4 times 3 is 12, and then it equals the h minus 3. Now I'm going to subtract h from both sides because I always want to attack the smallest number of the variable first. That gives me 3h plus 12 is -3. Now, this is a danger moment. That 3 is negative. It's very important that you bring down the -3. That's one place where students could have gone wrong. The second place, when you subtract 12 from both sides, again, just like before, and this is good because I show the step this time. only one minus sign. -3 minus 12. That's it. If you see 1 in the problem, you can't put 2 in the calculator. That'll get it wrong every time. The plus 12 minus 12, they cancel out. That gives me 3h is -15, because -3 minus 12, put it on your calculator, or -3 plus -12 if you wish. Only one negative sign on each line is -15. I divide by 3, and that gives me h is -5. Okay, so that's what the correct answer should be. You try this one. Go ahead. Okay, so we distribute to 5. That will give me 5h minus 10 equals 2h plus 17. Subtract 2h's from both sides. That gives me 3h minus 10 is equal to 17. Add 10 to both sides, and I get 3h is 27. Dividing by 3, h is 9. Okay, so those are some review of 2 questions that caused difficulties, and hopefully if there was any misunderstanding, you now understand it better. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do on this particular video is talk about factoring using the greatest common factor. So let's go through these together, one at a time, and then I have a sheet for you to work on. Okay, so if we take a look at number 1, what's the greatest common factor that they share in common? Now, first off, all the letters of the 3 terms, N, K, and P, they're all distinct, so they don't share any letters in common. They only share a number in common, and the number that divides into 7, -28, and 35 is 7. So I'm going to factor out that 7 they share in common, and then when I factor out, which factoring is division, it's the opposite of distributing. When I factor it out, I'm reverse engineering this. I have 7. When I factor out the 7, I'm left with n. When I divide out, because factoring is division, from 28k, I'm left with -4k. And from the 35p, I'm left with 5p. Now, what we always say to check our reverse engineering is to distribute back and see if it checks. So 7 times n is 7n, 7 times -4k is -28k, and 7 times 5p is 35p. Okay? So that one right there, that's a very standard type of factoring using the greatest common factor. Standard, excuse me, in the sense that you're looking for a numerical common factor. Now, for number 2, we're not going to look for a numerical common factor. There is none. We're going to look for, other than the trivial one, we're going to look for a variable common factor. So what does b squared, or what do b squared and 9b share in common? Well, they share a b in common, so I'm going to factor out that b, and when I do that, I'm left with, I think, b plus 9. B squared had a bb. I took one of them out, so only a b is left, and 9b, when I factor out that b, only 9 is left. Now, we always do the quick mental check, distributing back to check and see if it's right. So b times b is b squared, b times 9 is 9b. So the first case was when the greatest common factor was a number. The second case, the greatest common factor was a variable. And in this third case, you have one of each. Go ahead. It's my dog chewing on a bone in the background. So in this case, they share a 3 in common, because 3 will divide into 3 and -12, and an x. So I factor out my 3x. What I'm left with in the first term is 1x from the x squared, right? X squared is xx. One of them came out, so that leaves only an x. And when I divide out the 3 from 12, I'm left with 4, and the x came out with it. But we always do a quick mental check. 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times -4 is -12x. Okay, so now we're going to do a little bit of stop and start right here. What we have are 6 factoring using the greatest common factor questions. You do them, stop the video, start it up when you're done. I'll go over the correct answers. Okay, so in this first one, I look for what they share in common, and they share an 8 in common. So I factor out the 8, and I'm left with n minus 3. Whatever you think the answer is, just go for it. Like the old Nike saying says, just do it. When you check yourself back, any mistakes that you've made will become obvious. Now, the other day I did a lesson, and I forget if it was 1 or 2 questions. I remember one in particular where I left off a 2 as part of the answer. So when I did the quick mental check, it was obvious to me, so I corrected it. Go for it. Let's see what you get. If you made a mistake, you'll see it. 8 times n is 8n. 8 times -3 is -24. Okay, on the second one, what do they share in common? Well, the G and the H have nothing in common, but 18 and 27 definitely share a 9 in common. They also share a 3, and you may have put 3 on the outside, but that would not be the greatest common factor. That would just be a common factor. The directions with these guys usually say factor using the GCF, the greatest common factor. Multiplying back, 9 times 2g is 18g, 9 times 3g is 27g. Okay, number 3, I look for what they share in common. They share 7 in common. Let's see if I'm right. 7 times x is 7x. 7 times 4 is 28. Sure, and 28 divided by 7 is 4, of course. Number 4, well, they don't share any variables in common, but they definitely share a 5 in common. So if I divide a 5 out of 5a, I'm left with a. 5 out of -35b is -7b. And 5 out of 20c is 4c. Distributing back, 5 times a is 5a, 5 times -7b is -35b, and 5 times 4c is 20c. Okay. Number 5 I look at, they don't share any numbers in common at all, but they do share a variable, namely a. Let's check. A squared means AA. If I take one of them on the outside, there's only one left on the inside. And 9a, I factored out or pulled out that a, that's left with 9. Let's distribute back. A times a is a squared. A times 9 is 9a. So that looks good. And now number 6, finally, we have one where we have both a number and a variable in common, a constant and a variable. So I'm going to factor out a 2 and an a. 2AA reminds me of that commercial for life insurance for the military and car insurance. 2AA, we pull out one of those a's, and that leaves me with a single a in the beginning of the binomial in the parenthesis. And 4a, 4 divided by 2 is 2, and the a comes out. Distribute back. 2a times a is 2a squared, and 2a times -2 is -4a. So there, all my factoring with the greatest common factor is complete.